Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our February webinar, Getting to Know Your Non-Competitive Eligibility Benefit. My name is Chris Hawks, and I'm a training specialist with AmeriCorps VISTA, and I'll be facilitating today's presentation. You'll also see my colleague Eric Powell from VISTA assisting in the chat and Q&A, as well as our webinar support team, LSI, in the chat and assisting with any technical issues throughout the presentation. And today we are here to talk about non-competitive eligibility, also referred to as NCE. So another acronym, I know, but it's a lot of syllables and non-competitive eligibility. So may use NCE a little bit more throughout the presentation. But and it is a special benefit that VISTA members have access to after service. And just looking at our agenda today, we are going to first define and clarify the NCE benefit, explore how you can take advantage of your NCE status, and consider ways you can highlight your VISTA service and NCE eligibility when applying for a federal job. And just to mention again, a quick reminder, just because we do get this question pretty frequently, and I know some members are still joining at this moment, but just to note, we will be recording this webinar and we'll post the recording and handouts to the VISTA campus in just a few days. Okay, great. So we have the agenda. Let's get started. First up, definition, what is non-competitive eligibility, or NCE? So non-competitive eligibility is a hiring status. It permits federal agencies to hire former AmeriCorps VISTA and Peace Corps members who meet the minimum qualifications to apply for federal jobs without having to go through the full competitive selection process. Okay, that's a lot of words, so what exactly does this mean? So I think the best way is just a quick example. So let's say you're among 100 people applying to the same position. These applications will often or almost always go through a screening process where all the applications are screened prior to reaching the hiring manager who ends up making the decision. So out of those 100, a certain amount, let's say 20% of those 100 reach the hiring manager, and they're the most qualified applications of those 100. Now with NCE, as long as you meet the minimum qualifications, your application would be among those sent to the hiring manager for review. So it kind of bypasses that initial screening process as long as you meet those minimum qualifications. So let's break it down a little bit further. First, it's important to know that NCE status does not mean that a VISTA is guaranteed or entitled to a federal position, but rather it permits, and we want to emphasize it doesn't require, but permits a federal agency to hire a VISTA alum who meets the minimum qualifications for a position without going through a formal review process. That means that you can be appointed to federal positions that may or may not be available to the general public. So for an example there, some jobs posted on the VISTA campus job board are specifically and only aimed at those with NCE status. So you'll be able to apply to some positions that aren't open to the general public and may not be listed on USAJobs. In addition, your application could be processed faster than others because as long as you meet the minimum qualifications, your application goes quickly through the screening process. That being said, this is the federal government that we're talking about. So while it could go faster through the application process, we'd still recommend planning on a lengthy process just in general, which we'll go into that in a little more detail in a bit. And there are a few important considerations to keep in mind when it comes to NCE status. So first, this is a federal hiring status, and it only applies to federal positions. Jobs in state governments or in the private sector do not recognize the non-competitive status. Second, the NCE benefit has a limited term. The status is granted to VISTA members upon successful completion of their VISTA service and is valid for 1 year after the last day of service. We'll go more into that in a bit as well. And finally, you have a role to play in advocating for your NCE status. Hiring managers will not automatically know that you qualify for this status, so you'll need to communicate your eligibility throughout the hiring process. And let's dive into that last bullet a little further. So the reason why you will need to communicate your NCE status is because there is no one entity that manages individuals with NCE status or administers this benefit. This is one of the most important things to keep in mind as you think about how to use your NCE status. So what we're saying is there is no NCE office, no NCE agency that has like a database with a list of NCE recipients or those who are eligible for NCE. So a hiring manager will not be automatically alerted to the fact that you are a VISTA alum. And not all hiring managers are familiar with the NCE status, so they may not know that it's a thing that exists. Now, our goal at AmeriCorps is to change that, where we're trying to make sure all agencies, all hiring managers across the federal government are aware. And we do and have seen progress, and will continue to advocate across agencies. And that's both for the NCE benefit and just the fact that VISTA alums make great job candidates based on the work you do in the challenging situations you face on a day-to-day basis. But it is important for you to know the ins and outs of this benefit, and also important to advocate on behalf of yourself for its use. I know I served in the Peace Corps, and when I wrapped up my Peace Corps service, I really failed to fully understand these 3 bullets on the screen. Because I kind of did assume that I would automatically, maybe be registered or tagged as having NCE when applying, and that simply wasn't the case. So I found out the hard way. So we're going to talk about what this all means, and we'll offer some strategies. But before going into those details, we just want to recap and review the important points discussed so far, just kind of on the definition of what NC is. So this will be a quick review. On the screen, you will see a poll that asks you to answer the following 3 questions. So when does your NCE status start? Does NCE status guarantee a federal job? And how long do you have NCE status? So we'll just ask that you take a minute or 2 to complete the poll. Should show up on your screen now, all 3 questions on the same screen. So you'll probably have to scroll down to get to that 3rd question, and also scroll down to submit, I believe. And just give it a moment. Most have already answered. We'll give it another, say, 5 to 10 seconds, coming in fast, which is a good thing. You're sure of your answers? I love it. Okay, it does look like it is still wrapping up. Okay, well, we will go ahead and close that out and just kind of quickly review these. So thanks for your responses on those. So with the first one, so when does your NCE status start? That's as soon as you complete your service. 95% got that correct. Great job. So just to clarify, to be eligible, you must successfully complete your full year and 365 days of service. This often prompts a question of kind of like when to apply if you're looking for a position directly after service. And we will touch on that in just a bit. And for question number 2, does NCE status guarantee a federal job? Let's see, that was 97% selected no, and that is the correct answer. But for that 3% who maybe weren't sure on that, just to clarify, it does not guarantee a job, but it does give you an advantage and leg up in the hiring process, so long as you meet the minimum qualifications for the position you're applying for. And then 3, how long do you have NCE status? Looks like this was at 90% who selected 1 year. So the vast majority got it correct. It's 1 year. We often get questions about this 1-year limit and extensions, and again, we'll go into that as well. But just want to make sure you have these basic definition type questions down before we kind of dive into the further details. Which, let's do it. So, so some common questions that are kind of associated with this that come up. If you serve as a VISTA for 2 years, does that mean you get 2 years of eligibility? And the answer to that is no. So no matter how long you serve as a VISTA, you only get 1 year of eligibility after your final year. Now this is, in this example, in this common question, we're talking about someone who served back-to-back years. Now, if you serve a year now, and you have your NCE benefit available for a year, and then you come back and serve as a VISTA 10 years from now, then yeah, you would technically get 2 years of eligibility in that scenario. So just to clarify, but you wouldn't, this question is more aimed, we get questions about if you would get 2 consecutive automatic years of eligibility because I served 2 consecutive years. And then another common question, you've served several part-time VISTA terms that add up to a full year. Can you get NCE? So, so let's say, for instance, you've served as a VISTA summer associate for this project for the past like 5 years, where you're serving 6 to 8 to 10 weeks each year, and you add those up, and also you've been 6 months in now, so that all that kind of adds up to a year. Will that allow me to get NCE status because it's 365 days? And unfortunately, no. So it's only granted to those who have served a full-time year-long VISTA assignment to receive that NCE status. And then another common question, is with regards to extensions. So, as mentioned, NCE status lasts for 1 year, but it can be extended by the hiring agency for an additional 2 years for a total of 3 years from, and that starts from the last day of your VISTA service. Extensions to your 1-year status are allowed for 3 reasons. So 1, you enter the military. 2, you become a full-time student at a recognized institution of higher learning. And 3, you engage in another activity that the hiring agency thinks warrants an extension. Now, this last bullet may be a bit vague, but that can be a good thing, as it can really add some flexibility for extensions. So if you've ever viewed a position on USAJobs, you've noticed that there's a long description on each job position. So a long list of responsibilities and qualifications listed for each position description. So if after your year of service, you go on to maybe intern at a nonprofit, volunteer, or you take employment at an organization, if any of those 3 really develops and improves your skills, knowledge, or experience in 1 or 2 of those qualifications or responsibilities for the position, then the hiring agency definitely could deem that as engaging in an activity that made you an even stronger job candidate and could then warrant an extension. But the important thing, and we'll repeat this probably a couple of times, we want to stress and make sure to note that this is entirely up to the hiring manager or agency to allow for that extension. It's up to their discretion. Now, more times than not, they're going to say yes, as long as that whatever that activity is really did help you develop some skill or to allow for it. They're going to say yes, we'll take that extension into account. But just want to note that it is up to the hiring manager. Okay. Now let's look at how you can go about finding federal positions and using your NCE status. Now there are 3 key steps to use your NCE status, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on each of these 3, but just to note them. So first, once your term of service is complete, you can download your verification of service letter from your AmeriCorps account. This is a document you will need to include in your federal application to advocate for your NCE status. Secondly, you'll have to find open positions. As we mentioned before, there are even positions that especially request candidates with NCE. The best place to find these is on USAJobs.gov, but also remember to check out the job board on the VISTA campus and the Return Peace Corps Volunteers career link. We have links to both of those pages in the handouts for today's session. If you haven't seen it, we'll post it to the chat throughout the presentation and also follow up again with those handouts so you have those links. So with those, like the job board or the RPCV career link, you could find a position that maybe isn't available or listed on USA Jobs on these boards. And that's a huge advantage where you have a federal hiring manager who is specifically targeting those with NCE status, and that happens. So of course, other times there's going to be positions that are posted on both, open to the public, on USA Jobs, and these external sources. And then finally, you'll need to advocate for your NCE status during the hiring process by putting language in your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile that states you have non-competitive eligibility. Likewise, if you get to the interview stage or you're at a career fair meeting with potential federal employers, maybe whether virtual or in person, let them know that you have NCE, definitely. So let's take a closer look at each of these three for a second. So on the service letters, once you've successfully completed your service term, you can obtain the VISTA verification letter from your AmeriCorps account. Once you log in, you'll find the verification of service letter under the My Service Letter link, which is on the left-hand side of your member homepage. Now, this is the same area where you can view your currently serving letters right now, only this letter will be slightly different once you complete your service. So if you haven't, many of you probably are already aware, but if you're not, if you like sign into My AmeriCorps, go to your member homepage, there's a link on the left-hand side that says My Service Letters. And you have access to, I believe, 3 right now, your currently serving letter and 2 additional ones. And then once your full year of service is over, that'll change. You'll have this one document that shows that's a verification of your VISTA service, and it has, and it's an important document. It approves your NCE status. It contains the language that explains NCE to the HR specialists. And of course, displays your dates of service, which will in turn reflect the time frame you can use it. And if you have any difficulties downloading that letter from your My AmeriCorps account, by all means, you can contact the VISTA Member Support Unit by either calling the National Service Hotline and opting for the VMSU, or by emailing vmsu@cns.gov, as you see there. But yeah. And it's never too soon to start researching and networking. Knowing what agencies are out there and what hiring managers may be looking for will allow you to think about how your current experience translates to that potential position. Hiring for federal positions can be a lengthy process. So if you're maybe planning for a job right after service, it's generally recommended that you begin the application process roughly 2 to 3 months before your service year ends. You should inform, in those scenarios, you should inform potential employers that the date your NCE will start, and you can show your currently serving letter that you have access to right now in My AmeriCorps. So that currently serving is a VISTA letter. That'll reflect what your end date will be. And just like in your cover letter, you can explicitly state, hey, I'm serving until May 1st, 2021. Here's my currently serving service letter that reflects my service dates, and it shows that I'm serving till May 1. And that effective May 2nd, I will officially have NCE status. And of course, that assumes that you will complete your service in full and not end early. You complete the full year up until May 1st. So great idea to let the hiring manager know that you will have NCE, give them a heads up. That allows you the opportunity to still apply for positions while you're still in service. Okay, and how to find federal jobs. So USAJobs.gov is the official hiring web portal for all federal positions, and the vast majority of positions that you apply for will be found on this website. You'll want to build a profile and use the USAJobs resume builder to build your federal resume. And we're going to do just a kind of a quick screen share to point out a few important features to those of you. Many of you are maybe very familiar with USAJobs, but to those of you who are maybe less familiar with the site, give me a second and I will pull it up as a screen share. 1 second. Okay. Okay, so bringing this up, let me get to the home page on USA. Oh, of course. I promise I was logged in, but it does log you out if after a few moments. Okay, so let's get started off. USAJobs homepage. This is where USAJobs.gov. You come here, you see at the top, that's where you can search for keywords or location and just do a quick search for positions. Scrolling down just a little bit, you see some information about start using USAJobs that they provide. They give you helpful tidbits on how to navigate the site. What we really want to highlight, though, is here, scrolling down, still on the homepage, you see Explore Hiring Paths. Now, the hiring paths are positions that are catered or directed towards specific individuals for a variety of reasons. So you see here on these top ones, you would have this icon next to a position that's open to the public. Those that are only open to current or formal federal employees might have this icon. For veterans or military spouses, you would have these green icons where those positions are directed to these individuals. And scrolling down, you have voila, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA has its own little icon, this little purple globe type icon here. And that's a big deal. We're on the USAJobs homepage, and it shows right here, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA has this unique hiring path right here on USAJobs. So I'm just going to click there just to show it. If you click here, it gives some information on Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA and how alums are eligible for the non-competitive eligibility. It kind of scrolling down, it kind of goes through the how it lasts for 1 year, but there is the option to extend for up to 3 years for those 3 reasons. And that's also a big deal because if you happen to come across a hiring agency or a hiring manager who is unfamiliar with NCE, this is a great place to start. Right on the USAJobs homepage, hiring path right there for Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA, and it shows what NCE is and how long it's able to be used for right here, right off the bat. And if you know the type of job you want or know the federal agency that you would like to work for, you can easily narrow or filter your search to positions that fall within your criteria. So just scrolling down at the bottom, it mentions including your certification of volunteer service, if you see right here. And that would be what we were just talking about, your VISTA verification of service letter. The SF50, most will not be needing, but if you're a former or current federal employee, you might need that. But the big thing to note here for that NCE is regarding that verification of service letter for a document you may need and will need. And then you can upload that service letter to your USAJobs profile so that it stays there, which we will just look at in just a second. So just wanted to point out this hiring path, again, that purple icon. And so like just coming back to the home page. Also wanted to mention just right under this hiring path, there's events here that, you know, may have webinars that might be helpful on positions to look for, on navigating USAJobs, on what to include in your resume. There's some interviewing events. Those might be helpful as well. But, and then here at the top, just to show that hiring path, if I were to just, if I'm a VISTA, I'm serving in Colorado, and I want to stay in the area. I want to find a federal position in Denver. So just type the location, hit search, and there's all these filters. I'm going to remove a lot of these filters that automatically came with mine. Try that again. Sorry. Okay, so Denver, Colorado, within 25 miles, 702 federal positions right now are available to apply for. Just wanted to show this because I'm fully aware that all of you know how to search, but I did want to point out on this right-hand side where you see top filters, the hiring path is one of the top filters that it shows. It comes off right off the bat. So you see those same ones we were just looking at on the home page. And here at the bottom, Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA, so you can filter here. You see in parentheses, 71 of these positions are catered specifically to Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA alums. So it's a good sign right off the bat that anything with this purple icon is a position that is looking for those with NCE status. They're familiar with it, they know what it's about, so it's a great area to start. So definitely wanted to point that out. Again, you know, search features, we could, you know, maybe don't care about location and you're willing to relocate anywhere afterwards to get a position. So you could do, maybe your bad duties have you writing grants or researching opportunities, and you want to look for any federal position that might be available for grant writing. So you just type in grants as a keyword. Shows 52 with this filter. So it kept the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA filter. So there's 52 jobs that have grants in the position title is a main point that you may want to look for. So you see 52 of these positions are looking for those with NCE eligibility. So just pointing that out, but also to note though, you don't have to use this purple filter. I think it's a great starting point, and I would highly recommend starting there to use your NCE. But I mean, you can go to positions to the open public, for instance, and there might be more available. Then there's plenty of other filters over here by agency, by pay grade, series, department, and even further features over there. So you don't have to use it, but those with that purple icon with the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps designation are generally more knowledgeable about the benefit and have an easier time hiring you and are specifically looking for you. So, but we do want to note it's not necessary exactly. So if you love a position but don't see the NCE designation or that Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA designation, you may need to advocate for yourself and ask them to take your status into consideration, mention it in your cover letter, highlight what NCE is, and yeah, point that out. And you can also save searches. You can sign up for email notifications when a new position comes to your save search. It's pretty standard search and filter techniques there. Okay. So once you have found a position, so you'll have to create a profile. Creating a profile is pretty quick and simple, pretty standard. I'm signed in here. I just click on my name, you see my profile. If I scroll down, this is my home page, shows my applications and any saved jobs or saved searches. And you see these 4 tabs up here. I won't click on profile just because it has my personal information. We'll skip that and we'll get doxed. But going over to documents, just want to show this really quick. You'll see here's where you'll have resumes or other, and just clicking on other, just wanted to show this because this is where you can upload your service letter. And we'll go over the resume builder in just a second, but pointing out the other, come down here, this is where you can enter transcripts or service letters or any other additional documents instead of the resume. I have my Peace Corps description of service one uploaded here, which is the equivalent, Peace Corps equivalent of the VISTA service letter. Just wanted to point that out. Also, just one note as well, as we look at a transcript, one note that we received from our HR department is that for whatever reason, they've often seen illegible transcripts. So maybe they're blurry, they weren't scanned properly, just not clear for whatever reason. So that's just a heads up. You know, when you're uploading documents here, just double check and view them afterwards and make sure they're clean and clear, because you don't want that to be the reason that maybe you aren't considered or for a position, or you don't make that final cut. Just double check that everything's clear. And then just coming back to the resume section, see I have one here, but just scrolling down to show this is where you can upload or build resumes. So you can upload your typical resume. And this is also where you can go to do the federal resume builder, where it really walks you through the process of building a federal resume, which is really detailed and quite different from a traditional resume. So the traditional resume, you know, typically 1 or 2 pages, maybe 3 pages long, but the federal resume can often be several pages. It gets really detailed, but it walks you through the process, and it's definitely worth it. It's definitely needed when applying for positions here. And then once you have built your standard federal resume, you can make it searchable by hiring managers. So you can come up, here's that searchable box. You just click that to make it searchable by hiring managers. You can also make a copy. That way you can cater it to specific positions. You can kind of keep your general copy and then make duplicates to cater specific ones. And then, yeah, other than that, after you created your profile and created a federal resume and uploaded any appropriate documents like your service letter, cover letter, then you can go on to apply for positions. Okay, so I know that was quick, and many of you may be familiar with it, but hopefully that kind of, I definitely wanted to show the hiring path, though, that purple icon. So I will get back to the slide. Let me pass this back to Colby. Nice, thanks, Colby. Okay, so how can I market my NCE status? So hiring a candidate with NCE status is desirable for federal hiring managers, but they have to know that you are eligible. And as we mentioned previously, there's no database or registry that shows that you have it. So when a hiring manager reviews your application, you want to make sure they are aware. So how do we make them aware? One important place to market your NCE status is, of course, directly in your resume, which we would highly recommend. As you can see on this slide, the VISTA listed their dates of service along with the date that their NCE expires. It's simple, it's effective, and it puts this information front and center. There's just a note, no need to use blue fonts like we used here on this slide. We just used the blue font just to kind of highlight it. but certainly italicizing it isn't a bad idea so that it stands out a little more and grabs the attention of the hiring manager. And of course, if you use LinkedIn, similarly, that is another place to highlight your NCE status. So LinkedIn can certainly be thought of as your kind of digital resume. So definitely another place you can advertise this in a similar manner. And then here on the screen, cover letters are another great place to market your NCE status. And because of their format, you're able to give a little more detail about NCE than you are able to on your resume alone. In this example, the VISTA states that they have NCE, the effective dates of their NCE status, and points the recipient to resources where they can learn more about NCE, as we talked about earlier. Again, we'll point out that you should not assume that all federal hiring managers are familiar with NCE. There may be times when you will have to explain this benefit. So it's vital that you know where to go for more information. That's a big reason why we wanted to show that hiring path on USAJobs, and that we want to highlight, of course, you want your verification of service letter that has that language in it. And as a final touch, this VISTA also includes their verification of service letter that will be available when you're done with service. So, and again, if you're applying for jobs during your final months of service and you don't have that official letter with the NCE language yet, again, you can use your currently serving letter and just explain the fact that you will be eligible for NCE once you complete your 365 days of service. Cover letter is a great area where you can provide that explanation. And then in addition to marketing your NCE status on your resume and in a cover letter, there may be a few instances where you will need to advocate for yourself. So just brought up a couple possible situations or scenarios because these questions do come up. So first, what if a hiring manager is not familiar with NCE status? So if this were to happen, you can share a link to the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps VISTA hiring path page on USAJobs.gov, our #1 recommendation. That page provides an official overview of NCE status. It's available, it's right there. And then of course your service letter also includes language and the executive order information pertaining to NCE. Definitely would recommend if you're speaking with them, you can either by email or on the phone, or in person, you can definitely direct them to that right there, or include that information in your cover letter so that they would know where to go to find that information. And next up, what if you think you're eligible for an extension? So as we stated before, you may be eligible to extend your NCE status for up to 3 years in a few circumstances. So again, that's if you're in the military, if you're studying at an institution of higher learning. So if you go on and maybe you have your bachelor's degree and you want to go on and pursue a master's degree with your education award after VISTA service. So, and that takes 2 years. So you can show that you were studying to complete your master's and getting a master's of public administration maybe, and you would show that to the hiring manager, and that would warrant an extension because as long as you're under that 3-year limit. Or if you're involved in an activity, of course, which the agency believes should warrant an extension, which we talked about previously. So in each case, remember that it is the hiring agency, not AmeriCorps, that enables extensions. So definitely make your case to the hiring manager. Okay, so when your VISTA service is over or nearing an end, here are some of the recommendations on next steps that will allow you to take full advantage of your NCE benefits. First, make sure that you know the ins and outs of this hiring pathway and how you can take advantage of it. In addition to this webinar, there are many resources available on USAJobs and AmeriCorps.gov. You'll need to be armed with the knowledge to advocate for yourself and answer any questions that come your way. Next up, search for federal positions. Right now, searching online on USAJobs is a great option. It's a great way to learn about federal positions, what qualifications may be needed, maybe certain things that you want to focus on, or also to see kind of areas in your resume, maybe some keywords that you highlight on a certain position that you like, that you want to highlight in your resume because you have that experience. So good way to just kind of sift through the jobs and look that way. Another great way to learn about federal positions and meet hiring managers is, of course, to network. Find federal hiring events in your area or online. We showed that events tab on USAJobs.gov. Reach out to federal employees in your town, or definitely connect with your fellow VISTAs and check out the VISTA and Peace Corps job boards. Definitely recommend. On more than one occasion, VISTAs have been offered jobs through word of mouth and the known quality of VISTA members and the work you do. And finally, make sure to let the world know that you have earned NCE status. So you worked during your service year, so don't be bashful when it comes to touting the results of that effort. In addition to all that you accomplished on your projects, put your NCE status on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, and in your cover letters. The Life After AmeriCorps guide offers some sample language and tips for writing a federal resume. And since the federal resume builder that we talked about, how it's a lot longer than the typical standard resume, it gets really detailed. I would recommend go ahead and creating your account and start building that federal resume, especially building on past experiences. Building up most of that so you could save that information. It might be more fresh in your head now versus like if you're ending 6 months now and want to do it all at once. Plus you may think of things in the next few months that you can add based on maybe certain positions you see, like we talked about on keywords you want to make sure that it's catered towards. And you can even, start on your bad duties and putting those into the federal resume, even if you're going to update that later after your service ends. And all of these resources, that we just mentioned, that Life After AmeriCorps guide and any of these links, these are all available from the handouts that were shared, the additional resources. So again, we'll post those on the VISTA campus along with a recording of today's presentation. We'll also follow up with an email for everyone attending here with those handouts. And it looks like there's some links in the chat. Oh yeah, thanks Jeff for those as well if you want to access those right there. So we'll make sure you have access to them. Okay, we're going to get to a Q&A section. It looks like there's a lot in the queue, so let's take a look at those. Before doing that, please just take a few moments to give us feedback on this webinar. Again, we're constantly reviewing your responses and trying to make it better for future webinars and new AmeriCorps members as well. So we love your feedback and want to know how we can improve this presentation, what worked, what we can improve upon. All is helpful. There's a link in the chat right now to the survey. It should appear as you close out of Zoom as well, but if you want to go ahead and tackle that while we start queuing up some questions, that's great as well. And thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. Okay, give me a second as I pull up some of these questions. There are a lot in the queue, so I'm going to ask Eric. I know, Eric, you've been tackling a lot and answering a bunch of these. Have you seen any, especially that are common questions that are coming up quite a bit that we should certainly address to everyone?
Thank you, Chris. Yes, there have been an overwhelming number of questions, and there's quite a few that seem to apply. Some of them you touched on, and I'll quickly go through a couple of them. One of them I think you mentioned, but people might be a little confused, is does the NCE status expire? And a lot of people related to that were asking if they want to go to grad school, how does the extension work? So are you able to kind of quickly review, does it expire and how the extension of NCE works?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, common question. Thanks, Eric. So yeah, your again, your NCE status, yeah, technically it does expire. It's good for a year, but it can be extended to up to 3 years for those reasons we talked about, military, going to school, or any other action or experience that you're working towards that the hiring agency deems is appropriate for the extension. So you can oftentimes get up to 3 years. So in the example of, again, going to grad school, let's say you finish your VISTA service and the timing is a little bit off where you have to wait maybe a couple of months before you start grad school. Then you can go to grad school in a couple months afterwards. Let's say it takes 2 years. So by the time you finish and graduate grad school, you know, you'd be 2 years and 2 months after your last day of VISTA service. So you're still within that 3-year timeline that would warrant an extension, and you would certainly still be eligible to have that extension and to use NCE as you come out of those 2 years of school. Absolutely. More than, again, we want to specify that it's up to the hiring manager to accept the NCE status, to accept that extension. But I mean, more times than not, vast majority of the time, they're going to accept it because it's straight and cut forward as to, you know, the reason you're requesting the extension. And as long as, you know, going to that to grad school, really develop your skills, your knowledge, your experience in order to be a better employee, a better suited for that position. It's cut and dry. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Chris. And one other quick question related to extensions was, is there any sort of form that we have to fill out to get an extension on our NCE status, or is it done automatically by the federal hiring agency where we apply?
It's not the former. There's not a form that you would fill out. Another good question. So again, this is what we were talking about, how you kind of have to advocate on your behalf, especially in those scenarios where it kind of ties into the beginning too, where there's not a registry, there's not a database and a list of this many VISTA alums and Peace Corps alums, you know, finish their service on X date. So all of them are absolutely eligible for this year and could be eligible for up to 3 years. There's no list that any hiring manager can have access to, which is unfortunate. I wish there were, but there isn't that database. So this is where you have to advocate for yourself, and we highly recommend doing that in the cover letter. Also, you know, mentioning NCE status in your resume for sure. But in your cover letter, you can mention NCE status, note where there's more information on NCE status to the hiring manager, so whether that's in your attached verification of service letter or on USAJobs. Again, that's a huge resource, especially for hiring managers who may not be aware of either NCE or maybe they're not aware of the extension. Both are explained on that homepage, that link to the hiring path for AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. That's a great resource to use in that situation. So there's not a form to fill out. It's more advocating for yourself and letting the hiring manager know that you are eligible based on this criteria.
Great answer. So another quick question that came in that's been very, very popular is, what is the advantage for hiring managers to hire NCE status candidates? We know you talked a lot about it gives them the opportunity to get a job, but it's not a guarantee. But do you have any quick tidbits of information about what's the advantage of them hiring an NCE status candidate?
Yeah, definitely. And it may depend on the scenario. It's a huge advantage if, for instance, you meet a hiring manager at a career fair, let's say, and you hit off great. You think you're great for the position. They think you're great. If you mention your NCE status, that they can speed up the process by bypassing quite a bit to hire you. They couldn't hire you on the spot that day. I'm not saying that, but you would be able to bypass, the initial screening process, and they would be aware that your resume is going to get to their desk as long as your resume and meets those minimum qualifications. Again, that's the big part. If you meet the minimum qualifications for the position, then your resume will get there to the hiring manager, and they can decide right off the bat. It could be fast for them once they receive. We had our example. Let's say 100 apply to a position. 20 typically, and I'm just guessing on this. 20 go to the hiring manager. You're the 21st because you meet the minimum qualifications. And if they're already dead set on hiring you because they met you, you're a great fit, then at that point, they can hire you due to your NCE status. It makes it faster. They can get someone on board to help and fill that position that they need right away. So they definitely see it as a benefit for the NCE status. I'll also note that the hiring path on USAJobs is also a good filter even after your NCE expires. So let's say 5 years down the line after you finish your VISTA service, I would still use that because they're looking at VISTA and Peace Corps alums as valuable human resources, as those that they know the work that you've been doing in your community, that you know how to tackle challenges, that you face challenges like many never experience in the typical work environment. So that's an advantage as well for some of these hiring managers who know the work that you do. And absolutely, it's a big pickup.
There's a couple more questions, but given the time, I don't know how many more questions you want to answer verbally. Just let me know. I have a couple queued up.
If they're quick, yeah, let's try to tackle one at least, and if depends on. I'll try not to run my mouth so we can get through both.
Well, I'll ask one of the questions that we haven't gotten to, and it's come up a lot, as a lot of people are talking about when they apply for jobs. It's asking for their GS level or their grade level in relation to employment in a federal position, and a lot of the questions that have come in are saying, do we know what the GS equivalent is of someone who's leaving AmeriCorps VISTA into going into the federal workforce?
I don't know that, and I don't believe you shouldn't need that just because those in an AmeriCorps VISTA member isn't technically a federal employee, and those that are looking for that GS level are those who have previously had that, previously been a federal employee or a current employee that have that GS level or an equivalent. So yeah, in those situations, the VISTA member position wouldn't have an equivalent in that scenario. I don't know, Eric, do you have anything to expand upon on that?
No, that's the exact answer that I have, is that as a VISTA member, you're not an employee, you're not receiving a salary, so there's not an exact GS equivalent.
Yeah. Okay. And then did you have another question? We could go really quick.
Just a really quick one. A lot of people were asking about the best way to communicate your NCE status, and I know you talked about resume and cover letter, but did you have any other ideas about a quick way to talk about it in an interview or emailing the hiring agency ahead of time to let them know about NCE status?
Yeah, in an interview, there are some tips actually in some of the links that are shared. And I'll just throw those in the chat again. But again, we'll email those out, especially on AmeriCorps.gov. Life After AmeriCorps guide has some tips and tricks to use in the interview process to highlight it. In terms of like, you know, when you go to a USAJobs and there towards the bottom, it does oftentimes have a contact person for the HR department. And you could reach out. It depends on the hiring manager. I mean, they are busy and oftentimes, you know, going through receiving applications from numerous, like in our example before, 100 applying to one position, that's not necessarily uncommon. So I don't know how many emails they get from those who are applying, but it's probably a lot that they have to filter through. So I don't know if it's best to contact them directly to notify them of that. I would highly recommend explaining it in the cover letter. If an explanation is specifically needed, for sure. I think that's the best way to do that, because those are going to be read and they're going to notice that. And, you know, you put it at the top of your resume as well, italicized, so that they're aware of what it is. And then in your cover letter, you can provide either links or explanation on where to go to find out more information if they happen to not be as familiar. But yeah, thanks, Eric. And I know there's a ton more questions. We'll try to stay on for a bit to answer some of these one-on-one. In the interest of time and to respect everyone, it's at the top of the hour. So we'll move on from the audio portion. But again, if you want to hang on, I'll hang around and try to answer some of these in the queue as well. But we do want to thank you for attending this webinar. I know there's some cloudiness to NCE. I can totally relate because I felt the same after my Peace Corps service. But we hope this was helpful, and we certainly hope you can join us on our next webinar in March, tentatively scheduled for March 24th at 3 p.m. on writing winning grant proposals, same time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. I say tentative, and we should officially send out an email and put the registration information on the campus very shortly. So we hope to see you there. And again, thank you. We know the search for a job may sometimes be long, but finding the perfect fit makes it all worth it. And NCE is one of many benefits earned as VISTA member, and a benefit that can help put you on a path to a lifetime of service if that's the direction you wish to pursue. So we thank you so much for serving as an AmeriCorps VISTA and for your participation today. And we wish you all the success in the world this year. And this concludes today's webinar. And thank you so much for your service.